Welcome to In the Flow, where we explore how marketing leaders leverage operations to eliminate chaos and capture opportunity. I'm Anthony Welgemoed, CEO of Ziflow. Julia, so welcome to the pod. Thank you for joining me today. Julia, you've had, I don't want to say too extensive experience, but you've had some good experience working in agencies and in-house. So I think it's going to be an interesting discussion today. But to kick things off, do you just want to give us a quick background of yourself and, what you've been focusing on, in the past and what you're focusing on today?
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. Also, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. My history, I am living in London at the moment. Maybe I'll start at the end. I've just started my own business with some partners called In-House Agency Review. We go in and build out creative operating models for in-house agencies and for agencies outside of a brand. So really looking at how the whole ecosystem works. So how I got here, how I really got here is obviously I'm not from England. I'm from Canada, but also was born in Russia. So there's a bit of back end information for you. Coming into school and all of that, I was really passionate about advertising. That's what I wanted to do. Got my first job at JWT doing project management at a time which was also really disruptive. Right now, it's really disruptive. Social just kind of digital. People are like, oh, we're all going to lose our jobs. So been through that kind of scary phase. And went from a very traditional model back at JWT when it existed, which was traffic and production, to project management, where you think about doing everything. And then moved, to Leo Burnett's for a little while, and then moved on to VCCP, where I spent almost 10 years as head of creative production there. And really kind of had my first stint in learning how to lead people, leading a team, working in a really dynamic, brilliant environment where you had a lot of self-starters and just some great work being made. And I think if you know about VCCP here in London anyway, they are a machine. It was like the kind of place where I always wanted to work, where everybody was quite self-actualized and autonomous and had a lot of accountability for what they did. If you got a bunch of people in the room, they were going to make brilliant work. So it was a great place to learn how to build a team. I spent 10 years there, like I said, and then kind of just started thinking, okay, where do I go from there? How do I build out my experience? Felt pretty strongly that if I went to another agency, I'd kind of be doing more of the same somewhere else. So thought in-house, that's the place to go. Got a call from Specsavers, which in the UK is probably one of the UK's most loved brands. The campaign Should Have here has been running for about 20 years, just run IPA Effectiveness Gold last year, and, very frequently out in the awards circuit winning things and really loved by the public. So it was kind of a no-brainer. They've had an in-house agency for about 20 years. So got the opportunity to go in, transform the in-house agency from a creative department to a full-service 360 agency. We were originally servicing our UK team in certain areas, and then we moved to servicing basically all of our global markets for creative strategy, ideation, and really leading that charge. So I built out the creative operating model there, the ways of working, the workflows, a lot of the team, and, spent 5.5 years in that amazing environment. Also in Guernsey, because it's not in London, but that's something we can talk about later. That's a whole other thing. And then really thought about, okay, full circle moment. I kind of want to be able to do this for lots of brands, go out, build out how you're going to work, make the whole operating model and the ecosystem work really well together. So that brings me to where I am today with In-House Agency Review.
Sort of joined and started this year, is that correct?
Yes. So I worked with one of my co-founders at VCCP. She was head of account management and I was, in production, the awesome
it's a good combination.
A really good combination. So we already kind of were in the flow of how to work together. She went and set up the in-house agency at PMI. So really big job to be done there. And she said, Jules, please come over. I need to help inspire the team. You guys do such great work at Specsavers. Can you talk about how you guys have created the team there and like help reinvigorate my team? I've got this big program of work. And I was like, yeah, I'm there, whatever. We reconnected. And then I saw that she'd started in-house for agency review. And I was like, damn, that's what I want to be doing.
That's great.
So yeah, and then we reconnected and she was like, let's do lunch because, I was interested in going out on my own. And the rest is history, 6 months. And we're busy, we're working. And it's just really exciting to be able to solve problems for businesses and create something new for people that really need to figure out how to work well together. Because I think everybody tries really hard to do great work, but there isn't somebody knitting that all together in a way that they can actually be able to operate really well.
And it feels like in a lot of places, we're all trying to reinvent the wheel. And,
Yeah.
I think it's a great time, especially with all the changes happening, and not just in terms of technology, but process and people and agencies coming together. We spoke about that a little bit, like all the M&A happening in agencies, all the different functions being put together rather than being disparate. It is a lot of change at the moment. And is that what you're seeing with your customers and sort of how you're helping them?
I mean, it's interesting. We're working with a network agency at the moment, helping them sort out their creative operating model. And they do have a really big network and it's, all around the globe. It's a super exciting thing to be working on. But they are working in a slightly fractured way. How do we bring all of this together? And they're on a big program to do it. But I think where we come in and the lens that we put on it is actually, right, how do we bring that whole operating model together? But how do we do it with a lens on what the client really needs and the language that they speak? Because it's interesting, being back in agency land after not being in it for 5.5 years is like, going from agency to in-house is like, whoa, we can talk about that later. But then going back, it's you kind of go back and go, wow, you just have a completely different lens on being in those meetings with clients compared to what you did before, because you've been on the other side.
Yeah, you've been on the other side now.
Yeah, you know what they're thinking, you know what they want and what they're doing. And I think it's really good because we've got a shorthand. When the client's saying that they want something, we really deeply understand exactly what they're talking about. And being able to be here and doing that, we can look at how we're building out the creative operating model, but also making sure that we're tailoring it for what the businesses we work with need. So there is an element, and I've been thinking about it a lot in terms of how do we build the agency of the future. And I think back 5.5, 6 years ago when I used to work in agencies, it's really been built around service, right? Service and sales, right? How do we, pander to what everything the client needs, and how do we sell more? And I think what clients are really looking for is somebody who's going to help them influence and somebody who's going to partner them. And I think we really, really feel strongly that we need agencies who are going to win are going to move from service to influence and from sales to partnership. So it's like, how do we build that ecosystem? How do we engage with the client in a way that is going to make sure that they aren't coming to us and tasking us with work, but they're coming to us with their problems so we can help solve their problems? I think that's really what we're trying to build here, with the client relationship, but then also internally looking at how do we get the best out of our network and how do we make sure that we are sweating the people and the assets we have here and that everybody values the contributions every single part of the agency makes. I think that was, when I was at VCCP, the incredible thing was that you would walk into a room and you would be able to know exactly what everybody did in that room, exactly what they were accountable for. And not only that, you thought they were bloody brilliant. And that those people were going to do an absolutely amazing job and you were going to do the best possible work on that project with that team. And, that was very much the sort of culture and feeling I brought into my work when I was at Specsavers. And that's very much something that I take with me, through anywhere I go. So how do we make sure that we're not just working really well together, but that we really believe that everybody we're working with is the best? Because if you think that they're the best, then you're going to set them up for success and you're going to expect them to be accountable. And I think that breeds a certain kind of culture.
Yeah, I think it ultimately comes down to people. At the end of the day, it's like, and I quite like what you were talking about, like moving from like services to influence, and that's really interesting. We've used a few agencies at Ziflow now to help us with the brand and help us with product positioning and so on. And I started off actually at an agency back in London when, but I was in software engineering and we were developing software, but you could see a little bit of how the agency worked and working with different customers. But it is really interesting what you were talking about, the influence. It's, yes, I want you to help us refresh the brand. Yes, I want you to help us with the positioning. But what I'm looking for is like, how do I get the message across to someone engaging with us for the first time, and it really lands and emotionally makes a difference? And I think I know agents have been trying to do that for years and years, but just producing content, I think with so much out there now, it's changing. People want more authenticity. They want more direct, just simple communication sometimes. And I think that's where Specsavers, that campaign just lands so well. I mean, because it just is like, it's a bit of British humor in there, tongue in cheek, and it just is so good. I'd love to just talk a bit through that. I mean, because I think that is like one of the most well executed campaigns. I mean, you had Compare the Meerkat with Compare the Market for a little while, and then that sort of like, it sort of dwindled. Those meerkats when they had babies and stuff, it just got too much. But
I worked on the meerkats. I was actually, So actually, I joined VCCP because they were working on Compare the Market, where Compare the Market was probably the best work in London. So I was, we launched the toys, which, when we launched Baby Oleg, I don't even remember baby that came out. When we took away because we left Oleg in Africa, people were crazy. And we used to call it the crack. We're like, oh no, we're going to get rid of the crack, because people were so obsessed with the toys. And it was just like, I think I've been really lucky in my career to work on two brands that are really, like you said, Compare the Market really isn't there. It's not like people aren't saying simples in Parliament anymore. They are saying should have, but not simples. But they were for a time.
I mean, it was for years. It was actually really well done. That whole campaign, it was cute. Yeah, but like I said, when Oleg came out, everyone was like up in arms, like hold on, where are the original characters? So,
yeah. I mean, it was just. I think, it's interesting working on two brands that are part of the vernacular, right? That really resonate and people make their own. I think that was the thing with Should've and with Compare the Market. People felt like it was theirs, and that story really resonated with them. And, working in those environments where people are creating that work, they really care. I think that, and to be honest with you, throughout my whole career with people that I've worked with, no matter on your experience level or what your skill set is when you get there, if you care, you will learn how to do brilliant work and it will be amazing. And I can tell you, with Compare the Market, any brief that came in, every single word would be agonized over. We would, look at the work and make sure it was the right thing. And how many conversations we had about leaving Oleg in Africa and whether it was the right thing to do or not, because
that was a big decision. Yeah,
it was a big, and launching the toys and all of this amazing stuff, that was because of a really deep and close relationship that the agency had with the client. Actually, Compare the Market came to VCCP with a completely different campaign. And, our creative director back then, Matt Lloyd, went to like the zoo and thought, oh, meerkat market, that's interesting.
It's amazing where these ideas come out. I was going to ask you, where did the inspiration come from?
It just sounded the same. Yeah, it just sounded the same. Oh, we've got this crazy idea. And the truth is, at that time, there wasn't that much to say about Compare the Market. What's the RTB?
Because we had a few different sites you could compare. For people who don't know, Compare the Market allows you to compare pricing of different products. It could be your gas, your electricity, no water really. I mean, you got Thames Water in London and that's about it. And then, but there was a whole bunch of like price comparison. It's a price comparison site basically, and
Yeah.
it works really well. And I think even flights and so on, if I'm not mistaken. But just having that spin on the because I think it started
It
off
just
with
had
like
to be memorable. That
yeah
was it.
yeah
All they had to do
yeah
was be memorable and funny. And we're like, okay, well, let's do that. And,
yeah
it's funny because the CMO who bought, you know, um, Meerkat, he's just left. And I did send him a note and said,
okay
Mark, his name is Mark File. And I just said, I just want you to know that I joined VCCP because of Compare the Market. And we did some of the best work of my career, and thanked him for that. And he was obviously really grateful, and he's done incredible work on the brand. And with Should've, it's really had that staying power because the team there is really protective of the brand. They're really conscious of, how do we make sure that we are being really human, that we are speaking to the public. And, there was a point where we thought, okay, what's going to happen with Should've? When I left VCCP, they were like, what are you going to do with Should've? When are you going to give it to us? I'm like, I don't think that's the point. But there was like a sense of it in the environment. What's going to happen with Should've? What are we going to do? How are you going to bring this into the future? And, we were doing incredible work. COVID hit, and then that was quite
yeah.
a weird
And it's sort
time
of
to make
you sort
work.
of like pause it, right? Or because I
Well,
mean people
yeah, the
because there was a lot
strategy
of
kind of changed,
okay
and during that time, and we had to go away and do a bunch of research on, how do we bring Should've into, how do we make it relevant again? What does it mean? What does it stand for? And thankfully, the research came out really well, and we did our first proper 360 integrated campaign everywhere, and we really put everything into it. And we didn't just do Should've. We also did, I Don't Go, which was a play on Should've, for the domiciliary part of the business, where that's the part of the business where people from Specsavers will go to people's houses if they can't make it into a shop and help them. It's a pretty incredible business.
okay that's
And
great yeah
it's great. And so, we'd done campaigns before, the standard of heroing somebody who can't go. And you could go down that kind of route. It's very easy to see where that type of work can go. And we really wanted to find a way to bring that humor and the tone of voice of Should've into that space. And we cracked it with sort of I Don't Go. And when we did that work, and presented it back to the business, some people in the business didn't feel comfortable with it. And it almost ended up on the shop floor. And we'd had to do research and put a lot of effort from the marketing and the agency team to really say, no, we think this is really the right thing to do, and we're willing to put ourselves on the line for it. And we've done all this research, and we went ahead and did it. And it was the most successful domiciliary campaign we've ever had. And every time it went live, you would just see the numbers shoot through the roof
that's
for
amazing
people. Yeah, it is amazing. And what it does is just talk to people at the same level that they're at. And I think, there is a lot of care and craft, and people, I think that, that kind of brings me back to, what's the difference between working in-house and working out of house. Is in-house, the objective is the brand purpose, right? Everybody's pointed towards the brand purpose. And,
yeah
luckily Specsavers has a lovely purpose, democratize down.
but and just also on Specsavers it's still a family owned it's still a husband and wife that are the family owns the business, right? And I think that is a key point there, because you don't have this pressure of, they can look long term. They can look at things differently. I wonder how much influence do they have on the brand and the purpose? Does they still have like big say, or is it just sort of?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I think they put a lot of trust into their marketing team, but they have the ultimate say. Of course they do. And Doug and Mary still go into the office, and You would see Mary walking around cleaning up the dirty coffee mugs that people wouldn't put away. And every once in a while we get away going, Mary's cleaning up your mugs, please clean them. But, they were lovely. It was, mm, it was, it was an amazing place to work and a really different place to work. I think it's also in Guernsey, which isn't in London. I think not everybody knows that Guernsey is in the
Yeah, I
Channel
didn't actually
Islands.
realize it. Yeah.
hmm Guernsey's in the Channel Islands. I think there's about 62,000 people that live there. The head office is there, and 65% of the agency lives and works in Guernsey,
Okay.
and or maybe more now. So it is really interesting in terms of having the core of your team completely isolated outside of the agency environment that's in London, doing outstanding work. And I think, talking about like, what's the difference between agency? What's it like going agency to in-house? And I think, I really felt like when I was at VCCP, I was working at like the best agency in the world. I was like, this place is the best. And when I went into Specsavers, I was kind of, not that I had a chip in my shoulder, but I felt like I know how to make great work. I know how to make great work with great people. And I'm really excited to bring that and do that here with these people. And I think I had such a huge learning curve because I think everything that I believed about how you make great work was turned on its head, because actually at Specsavers, we made great work, but we did it in a completely different way. And I think that's the thing.
Well, what was different out of interest? Yeah.
So many things were different. I
Okay.
think like so many things were the same, but the way that we did them was different. You still need to get a creative brief. You still have reviews. You still have client meetings. The client meetings, can be hallway conversations. You don't have to do this big fanfare. You don't have to have the stack of Pret sandwiches. It's just a colleague. So the relationships are very different. The dynamic is different when you're going into a meeting. I think, not to comment on the work-life balance culture in agencies, but there is a lot of pressure in London agencies.
Yeah.
People work
It's hard work. It's hard
very
work working in an
hard.
agency
Yeah.
in London. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know what? At Specsavers, for the most part, most people went home at 5 o'clock. Most people took an hour for lunch, and nobody sat there at their desk going, but I need this now. So I think there was an element of understanding the environment that you're working in and looking at the people that you're working with as colleagues and being able to just sort of operate in the same way as everyone else and have the same expectations from everybody in your team. I think the other thing that was interesting was how you collaborated. You just send a Teams message if you have a question. I'm not sure about that. You can just put in a meeting. Anybody can talk to anybody. There
Yeah.
isn't that sort
They
of
don't have the barrier
gates.
between agency and and you go through your
Yeah.
account manager at the agency
Yeah.
and so on. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I remember when I was at Specsavers, I went on, they had this day when a lot of the senior leaders within the business, they would call, I've forgotten what it's called now, but it would be a day where everybody in the business tries to visit every single store. So you would
Wow.
go out
Okay.
and you would try and visit like 2 or 3 stores so that at least every store in London or wherever had a visit from somebody in head office. And I went to 4 stores in one day. And I think it was just so amazing to go into the store and meet the people who are running the store and hear from them, like, what can we do to help you? What do you need from the business? But also the passion that they have for what they're delivering, because they're delivering the services that we're all working really hard for. And that kind of connection to the business and going, oh, I'm doing this work for this person and these people to be able to be successful, but also meeting all of the customers and going, these people, they need to have their hearing and eye check. That is making a huge difference to their lives. It just like gave you a level of your own personal purpose in terms of how you are actually impacting someone's actual life.
The other thing I thought that was really interesting was how Specsavers, what they did is, we all think about, your eye test and, et cetera. But then they started with these campaigns around the hearing tests. And that was just I mean, I think it was the Rick Astley, or was that one of the first ones, or something like that? And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about. I think you were there at the time when they
I
ran
was
a few
there
of
at
these
the time.
campaigns. Yeah,
So actually, the Rick Astley work, which was
that
fantastic,
was
was
really
done
funny. Yeah.
by the social media team, and they
Okay.
worked with one of our partner agencies because we did the above line creative and strategy, so big 360 campaigns. But actually, that was done by a third party agency that the team were at, and it was fantastic. And I think the thing that is also brilliant and different to working in an outside agency is that if the business does well, we all do well. So it's not about like, oh, they've done that, they're rubbish, we don't
Yeah.
like
Good
that. It's
point.
going, oh my God, absolutely brilliant work. They won a Cannes Lion for that. And I think, we can all celebrate that because it benefits the business and it does really well. And I think, that's a really good example of actually a really simple idea having amazing reach.
Yeah, I thought it was really good using him, and the fact that they recorded the same song, we all know it, with different, with obviously we all hear different lyrics, or we sort of hear different lyrics, and just doing that was very good. And yeah, and I thought the other one that was really good that you guys did was the whole billboard thing. And I remember there was one in the sort of the area I lived in, London, where you had the Specsavers billboard vertically instead of horizontal, and that was just really good.
Great. I mean, I think it's interesting because we're kind of going at that time. It's important, like awards aren't as important in-house, but they are important for the team in terms of recognition for their work. And I think we did win a few awards, and we're really strategic about the awards that we go into and how we win them. Kind of go, okay, out of our program of work, where do we think we are going to focus our attention in terms of really driving creative. Well, I mean, we drive for creative excellence everywhere, but where do we think we can win something? And I think at that time it was an outdoor, right? Because and so that's where and it's so simple, and of course it's a no brainer. Why wouldn't you? Um,
Yeah, but no
so
one's
yeah,
really thought of
great.
it, to be honest. Then you have the
Yeah,
ladder under it. I mean, it's just
yeah,
like it just kept,
it's great.
yeah, it was so much you
There's
could
so
do
many
with it.
things you could do.
Yeah,
They've just
it's
done.
brilliant.
I've just seen one they've just done for hearing where they've just kind of taken the opacity down on some of the words so they're lighter. It's just should have is
Yeah.
just an incredible platform to build on, and it can keep reinventing itself, and it's really human. We all go, oh, should have done that. And I think the power of the in-house agency is they're constantly thinking of ways how to reinvent should have for the now. And I think we proved that you can continue to do that, and it can do lots of different things. It's not just this one way of working. So yeah, that's really
No,
good.
that's brilliant. And getting back to your newest venture, how it just talk a little bit about, like, you working with different customers and so on, but how do you see the whole creative production, creative operations change, and how do you see that with tech? I mean, the whole AI wave is obviously upon us, and we sort of in it. But how's everyone thinking about the process, the tech, the people, and especially all this new tech coming? Is it sort of top of mind, or are people worried? Or what are you seeing?
I guess it depends who you're working with and how far along they are, right? I think, you hit the nail on the head. Creative operations about people, process, tech, and how you fit everybody within the creative operating model to be able to work consistently and understand how those different elements lean in and lean out to depending on your workflows. And I think when we're defining the operating model, and we've got a very specific methodology that we work to, we really go in and we'll spend some time with the client, really understand where the pain points are, what's working, what's not working. I think the worst thing anybody can go and do is not review their creative operating model and their whole ecosystem and just plaster a piece of tech over it. Because what happens if you do that is you just end up amplifying the cracks in the system. So it's really important that you go in, look at how are we doing things, why are we doing them, who are we doing them with outside of the tech, and then understand what tech you want to build into that and what value it's going to bring, and then understand how it all plays together. And of course, the people that are going to make all of that a success. So the tech and the process are enablers to help your people do brilliant work. There is a lot of fear, not as much fear. I think people who have engaged with any of that tech aren't scared. I think it's the people who haven't engaged with it on a deeper level that are probably quite worried about, oh, it's going to take my job or anything like that. If you engage with it and you understand how to use it, you can really see the power it has to make what you do better. And I think that's what I found. I think, when I was at Specsavers, for example, I hadn't really experienced tech that much, some smart sheets a little bit, things like that. But when I came in, we were implementing Workfront, and they've been trying to implement Workfront for 18 months before I got there. I was like, are you sure this is the right tool? Blah, blah, blah. And the CMO was like, please just get it working. I got it working. We got it live. And, and it takes time. You've really got to figure out and understand exactly what you do and why you do it, who you do it with, to be able to make that piece of tech work really well, especially when you're looking at a workflow management type tool. That is key. And it's interesting now, we're working with this network agency, and we're working on helping them transition their clients internally. They've got their own tech. The clients have their own tech. How do we make those things merge and work really well? And, we're building out the operating models of how is this client going to integrate into the system? How is the system going to, shape shift around the client? And how do we build that sort of tailored approach for them? And then how does the tech enable that? And then also on top of how the tech here enables it, how does the client's tech plug in the right places? So
it's always
we're
hard
not
because they got different tech and it gets
Yeah.
messy.
Yeah, it gets messy, but I think the thing is, it's messy, but it's not that complicated if you know what you're doing and you know why you're doing it and you know what value that tech is adding where. I think that's the thing. And the scary thing is that, when you're fragmented and you're growing quickly and people are just doing whatever they want and you haven't got the right governance, you probably don't know what tech you have. You don't know what people are using. You don't know why they're using it. And that bit is the hard bit. Figuring out what you're doing, why, and what you're already using and what makes sense. That's really the exam question. Once you've done all of that, then you can pull together an audit of, okay, this is what I need. And I think when I was, I was leading the automation transformation at Specsavers. And when I wrote the brief, the top line in my brief was, don't let a human do a machine's job, right? And it was all about how do we make sure that we are bringing in tech that is going to enable and support the process, but not drive the process. Because what we really want is to make sure that people can be creative in how they do things. Because we're not making the same thing over and over again. We want to be able to work to outcomes, not to a process. However, that's in the back end, we do want to work to a process. We want it to be sausage factory work. We want it to be a repeatable, automated process that's scalable. So you need to have your systems approach flexible and curated to what you're trying to achieve.
So what did you actually, I would say at Specsavers as an example, I mean, that's a really great point of putting it. It's like, because I found like also with, we talk a lot about AI tools and, using AI, etc. But I think in a lot of cases, it's automation. It just allows you to automate more things because it can pull more information for you and quicker potentially. But then at Specsavers, as a real life example, I mean, what did you see was like very manual in the creative production, the creative operations processes that you felt like, because I found like sometimes people, and it's not people's fault, I mean, it's just human nature, you get quite comfortable with just the way things work. And then to change your mindset and go like, okay, let's automate that. It doesn't always come naturally to everybody.
So the most difficult thing when it came to automation in terms of, working to templates, for example, in that production automation space, was the feeling that we were not able to be creative and create the best work for what we want to automate. So that was a real challenge because I haven't seen a case study, and I've been asking these automation tools, whoever, to build me a case study. Can you build me a case study that tells me if I use a template and I can personalize and optimize at scale, that I will be more effective with those communications compared to building something bespoke and sending it out, right? Forget about the money,
Yeah.
right? What's the most effective? And I think my gut says that in those spaces, as long as you have a template that is creative and good or whatever, but in a lot of those spaces, it's about getting a really clear message across
Mm.
in a beautiful way that looks like you, so you're instantly recognizable. And my gut says that actually templated version would potentially be more effective than doing something really creative and whizzy. But I haven't seen a case study like that, so it's very hard
Yeah,
because our people
that's
in the studio.
surprising. Yeah, because
Have you seen
the
one?
well, the first, yeah, as I said, I was a software engineer back in the day, many years ago. The
Mm,
first, so I worked for an agency, and this was an agency that did rebrands for big organizations, so BAE Systems, for example, and some other big brands. And what we developed was a way for them to roll out the brand, but then also on the advertising side, we had other like car manufacturers, so they had a lot of
mhm,
franchises out there. They would then set up the campaigns at head office, for example, but then to roll that out, they had real trouble keeping it in line in a message, on
mhm,
track. So
mhm,
we created these templates where they could log onto the system. They had the asset library, they had messages, and then we would just automatically fill in all the financial or terms and conditions at the bottom. So it saved them a ton of time, and they could just produce it super quick. But yeah, we sort of never. I mean, I think they're still using it today. But
yeah.
we never ran a case study around this, and yeah, there must be something.
Right,
Yeah,
I think that's the challenge. I think that's the sort of high level creative and strategic thinking, and that systems optimization, automation thinking, and actually, and part of, the operating model and how you work is the reason creative operations has an opportunity now is, of course, creative and strategy is very important, but how you produce it and deliver it is something that more than ever before is something that needs to be thought of up front. And that's why creative ops has this sort of very unique moment right now to be able to pull all those strings together and orchestrate that whole environment. So I think, I believe that whereas a brief would come in to an agency of record and be like, oh, make me a 60-second ad and make it beautiful. And then everything would be matching luggage across. What we actually need is to think about sort of what we call like the hero creative, but also the halo effect, and have all of those people in that kickoff together, right? Thinking about, okay, we need to do this creative. What's the approach in terms of how we deliver? And just because you're doing this beautiful thing over here doesn't mean you're going to create matching luggage across. You want to make sure that you're native and channel. And in that lower funnel of work where it's like activation, actually a templated approach would be potentially the best approach because it's quicker, it's scalable, it's optimizable. Whereas if you do something bespoke, you won't be able to have that kind of impact depending on what your KPIs are and what you want to achieve.
and also if it's bespoke, yeah, I'm not going to complain on the review and approval cycles because that's what we do at Ziflow. However, it's gonna take longer. You're gonna have more review and approval, more versions,
Yeah.
et cetera, and it just takes
Yeah.
much longer to get it out exponentially. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah, and you can't just put it in a system to personalize it either. You have to do it all manually. It
yeah,
causes so many problems.
yeah, definitely. In terms of creative operations, you talk about unique moments. I remember we sort of delved into this, back in 2011, 2012. It popped up and then it feels like it sort of faded and it's coming. Feels like there's a resurgence in creative operations. How do you feel about it? I mean, it seems like it's some people get it, some people just don't get it. It feels like we're sort of in a niche community sometimes, but I'd love to get your view on it.
I Well, I came up through production and then creative production and then into creative operations. So, I mean,
Okay,
I
quickly, just what again for the audience, what is the difference? Because I think again sometimes people feel like it's the same thing.
It's not the same thing. I think it is a development out of production. If I'm honest, most creative ops people come out of production because you need to understand the nuts and bolts of how things are made and all the different people that are involved. I think if you look at people who are in production, they're very good at making things and they can pull together a team to make something, right? And I think as you move into creative operations, which is probably somebody who's moved out of the making to probably running a department within a larger ecosystem, they're thinking about the orchestration of how do I build an environment where people can make things really well and easily. So it's similar, but the skill set and this thinking, creative operations is just strategic operations, where this is strategic production, right? And I think and they need to work hand in hand, because as a creative ops person, for example, we're working on with a client right now, thinking about modular production. How do we create a sort of future-facing production approach? They want to use AI, they want to use CGI, they want to use CX, they want to shoot, they want to mix it all together and do all that kind of stuff and make sure that whatever this content studio that they're building has is future-proofed, which is absolutely right. But I'm not going to sit there and go, well, you can do everything together, because that's, and I would look at that sort of strategic production approach and have somebody come in and tell me about that. But what I would do then is go, okay, how does that connect to the rest of the business, and who are the players that need to be involved to make those decisions and get that brief together? So it works hand in hand with everybody. I would say production is an element of creative operations.
Yeah, perfect.
That was long. Sorry.
No, that's perfect. And so someone starting out today or relatively soon, it's not a trick question, but it's going to be maybe a tough question, is would you go agency, or would you tell them to start with in-house agency at a brand with their careers?
I feel like that's a loaded question. You're really putting me on the spot.
It's not meant to be, but it's the same. It's similar to like lawyers, because they have this, like, they can go law firm or they go in-house law, and it is. I mean, it's very similar where they go in-house law. So in-house, it's usually a bit more calm, whereas law firm, you're working long hours and so on. So I might be answering this for you in a way, but it's like, what lifestyle do you want to start off with?
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm going to cheat on your question, because I think it's interesting, because I was sat next to Gideon Spanier, who's the editor of Campaign magazine, and we were talking about in-housing and agencies and all of that. And I was saying to him, like, we need to stop putting the red tape between agencies and in-house, and we need to start talking about the creative community, and that creative community exists everywhere. And I think that's the opportunity, is actually there are brilliant creative people working in-house, and there are brilliant creative people working in agencies. And actually, how do we elevate ourselves out of siloing those two areas out? So to answer your question, what I'm going to say is actually look at what that agency or that in-house agency is doing. And I would say, look at who's being future focused in tech. I would definitely go where they are embracing technology and really thinking about their tech stack and how they work, because I think the future of creative ops is in technology. And like I said before, to be able to make the technology work, all of those other things already have to be in place. So you're going to get it all. And there are agencies who are doing it really well and are at the forefront. And then there are in-house teams who are also doing it really well, depending on where they are at different stages. So I would say go to the one that is embracing tech the most, and that you have an opportunity to learn, because now is the time to learn about tech, because we're all kind of learning it together, and you need to be able to speak that language. I think the benefit of going in-house versus going into an agency is an agency will be working on one part of the tech. And I think what I realized when I went into Specsavers is the work and the program of work is so massive that in agencies, you've got this ebb and flow of work. You'll be really, really busy, and then you'll be quiet for like a couple of days.
It's project. It's sort of
project based, campaign based. Yeah. When I was in-house, it's just constant. always on. There isn't that
Always
ebb
on.
and flow and that lull, and there's tons of work to do. And when you're thinking about a program of work, you are thinking a program of work across every single channel and every single funnel. And then you're working with different marketing teams and you're involved in a lot of different things. So, maybe I'm leaning
Yeah, maybe
towards
lean to in-house.
in-house,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah,
a
it
little
is.
bit.
And
But I think
I think
go
it's
where the
good.
most interesting people are
Yeah.
and the people are doing the most interesting things.
I think, yeah, oddly enough, I started on the agency side for software and then moved obviously to just software companies. But just now we sell into brands and agencies, but having worked in an agency, I think has helped me just see how it operates a little bit. And that's been a benefit in a way. So I think like if you might end up at an agency working in-house, as you said, you then understand from the client's perspective and just the empathy, will just increase so much more if you then eventually go to an agency side. So yeah, pros and cons for both, but it's interesting discussion, I think.
I think it's amazing. I mean, because we've got our whole thing is people, process, tech, right? So we will go in and we'll get to know the company. We'll look at the tech pieces, but we'll also look at the gaps in that team. And because we'll understand the business and we're working with the business, we'll then go, okay, look at our network of people and find the right people to fill those gaps or upskill the people that are already in that team. It depends on, what that structure looks like. But when I'm looking for people to fill that team, I am looking for people who just have a passion and an interest in those spaces. And I think right now at the moment, you don't have to have had deep experience with the tech. You have to be interested and be able to talk about it with curiosity and passion. I don't think that that's going to last that much longer. I think in the next year or two, people are going to want real experience in that tech. So we think right now it's a good time to just get in somewhere where
Super
people are
curious,
embracing it.
try it all out. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's really good advice. Yeah. Yeah. Final question, Julia. If there's something, you sort of wish you'd known before you started on this journey in your career, is there something that you would have wish you'd known before?
I would say yes. I think it's interesting because in creative ops, especially if you're in this area of business, what you want is for everybody to come to you with all of their problems, right? You want to be that person. If somebody has an issue, the first person they're going to call is you because they know you're going to be able to help them, not because you're going to have the answer, but they know that you're going to be able to help them and you'll help them figure it out. And I think if you're going to be in creative ops and you want to go into this area, you have to be that person who's really solutions focused. You're not going, no, we can't do that. You're not going creating a barrier for people to actually achieve what they want. What you're doing is creating the opportunities and the synergy within their environment and really thinking about how do I make this happen for them, or how do I facilitate an environment where we could really dig into this deeper? So that, I remember, when I was at VCCP, I had my boss say to me, like at the very beginning, when I first took the job at VCCP, I had 3 years of experience, and I got the job as head of department. And I basically went into the interview and watched The Apprentice before and said yes to everything the CEO asked
Yeah.
me. Yeah, and I was like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I got there. I was like, holy shit, this is a real job. But he did say to me at one point, and I was so busy and I had so much to do, and I wasn't used to people like coming to me with their problems. So I was just like,
Interruptions.
I just want to do the work. Like, leave
Yeah.
me alone. I just want to do the work. And I think when the penny dropped, going, actually, I'm here to solve these people's problems. And how do I listen to them and help them? And actually, the more I know about the problems, the more information I have to be able to help create an environment where they're going to do brilliant work. So I think try and find out as many problems as you can, be that person. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Julia, thank you so much for your time today. It was great discussion and chats about all the different campaigns and so on. I think it was super interesting. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Anthony. Great to
That's great.
be
Thank
here.
you. Yeah, I'm sharing insights from around the marketing, tech, and operations industries on how marketing and creative teams can get more done together.